All right, everyone, welcome. Thank you for joining me today. For anyone watching, this is our Next Stop Grad School panel event where we have invited several wonderful educated folks to come join us today and just talk about their experiences in grad school. We have a couple who are currently in grad school and a couple who have a few years of experience under their belt. And so hopefully this will help you feel a little bit more prepared if you're thinking of applying to grad school, if you've already applied and you've been accepted and you don't know what to expect, or you're thinking maybe somewhere down the line, you think grad school could be in your future. I hope that this serves as a resource for you, and you can also always come and talk to us here at CEW Plus for further counseling and more one-on-one information. So just to get us started, we'll just do some basic introductions. So why don't we start with Dr. Tremblay.
Hello, I'm Christopher Tremblay. I work as Executive Director of Enrollment Management and Student Affairs at Taubman College of Architecture and Urban Planning at the University of Michigan. And I've been in higher education for 29 years. I'm a first-gen college graduate and did my undergrad and master's degree at Western Michigan University and my doctorate at the University of Michigan-Dearborn. Glad to be here.
Great, thank you. Tara Skye.
Hi, my name is Tara Skye. I'm a master's student here at the University of Michigan. I'm studying environmental psychology and the CEWS program through the behavior education and communication track. I'm a student parent to 3 lovely children. I did my undergrad here at U of M with a major in psychology as a single parent and a first generation student, and I'm excited to be a part of this.
Thank you. Paiton?
Hi, my name is Paiton Podojil. I went to U of M for my undergrad. I got my Bachelor of Science in Nursing in 2016 from there. After that, I traveled to Cleveland for about 2 years where I worked in an ICU as a bedside nurse. And then I decided to go back for my doctorate in nurse anesthesia, which I graduated about a year and a half ago from Oakland University with my DNAP. And so I've been working as a nurse anesthetist for about the last year and a half and been loving it.
Great, thanks. Josiah?
Hello, everyone. My name is Josiah Caseman. I work in automotive at the 7th largest global tier 1 supplier. So we have like 140,000 global employees. I'm a senior manager in engineering, which is a lot of fun. And in terms of education, I started as an associates in arts. And then I transferred and I got a bachelor's in business. And then I waited some time and then I went back to school for a graduate degree. So I have a master's in business. So whole time I worked through it. So I was a non-traditional student in that way, but I'm happy to be part of this.
Great, thank you. And last but not least, Andrea.
Yeah, hi. So my name's Andrea Petsalis. I am a graduate student at U of M, earning a master's of social work, graduating in a couple of weeks. My pathway is the interpersonal practice in integrated health, mental health, and substance use. And I received my undergraduate degree from Michigan State. I graduated in 2021 with a degree in psychology and a degree in Spanish. And I am more of a, what you'd consider a traditional student, where I went right from high school to undergrad and right from undergrad to graduate school. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you all for introducing yourselves. So just to kind of jump into this conversation that we're going to have today, I'm really curious what inspired all of y'all to go to grad school. What was kind of the impact that you imagined using your degree for, or currently in your degree program? What do you want to do with it? Anyone who wants to jump in can go right ahead.
I'll jump in. So for me, I had done my undergraduate degree in public relations, and it was in my junior year that I took my first organizational communication class, and I fell in love with the topic, but it was kind of too late for me to change my major. So I was like, all right, maybe I'll consider getting a master's degree. And I had been exposed to master's degrees, by others who were pursuing that in the department. And I was working full-time. I graduated with my undergrad and got a job in college admissions. And part of the real motivation for me getting my master's degree was they offered 75% off tuition. So I was like, I need to take advantage of this because that's huge savings. And I think it was kind of expected that I would get a master's degree, having working in higher ed, that most of the colleagues I was working with were either pursuing a master's degree or already had one. So, and then one of the things I think that I liked about working and taking classes is that I could integrate the two together, which I think made it for a more meaningful experience for me.
Yeah,
I'll
that's a
kind of,
answer.
oops, sorry.
Sorry, no, go
Sorry,
ahead.
Casey. I'll kind of jump in. I pursued my undergraduate degree in psychology, and I always knew that would kind of just be a stepping stone. And I fell in love with my field of research and decided that a master's degree would really be the best way to pursue that further, and just have the opportunity to build on that. I wanted to explore more areas of academia. Getting involved as a GSI was instrumental in being able to work with students, and so it's been an exciting journey for sure, and one that I'm excited about continuing.
I would say for me, there was kind of multiple factors. I was introduced to the world of nursing anesthesia actually when I was in high school through a teacher that I had. And it was always something that kind of interested me. So I think that was like the first, step towards, okay, I want to learn more about this. And then to push me further, I finished my bachelor's, went into bedside nursing, and I quickly just realized that that was not something that I wanted to do forever. So from there, I kind of started exploring other avenues of what else could I do with my nursing degree? And so there's tons of things you could do, but then I started chatting some nurse anesthetists more and talking to people. And I realized that was something I was really interested in. So I made the leap to go back to school, and then here I am now.
Awesome. So I guess I'll jump in here. So for me, going back to graduate school, it was always something, even as I had my undergraduate, that I was very interested in doing. I think Warren Buffett says, education is the #1 investment that you can make in yourself. Nobody can take it away. So the more you can understand and the more knowledge you can gain, the better off you are, just I think in general, period. So I think for myself, I was always interested in it. I didn't know right out of college, what kind of a career I was going to land in, because I kind of took a broad scope approach to my degree. So I didn't want to do it right away until I really understood what I was going to do. And so I waited for like 5 years, and then I ended up getting into an executive program on the accelerated path. But there was really two motivating factors for me. One was career advancement. And I think there's definitely an opportunity on the business side. With the more education you get, the more readily available you seem to be, in terms of being advancement worthy, if you will. And then the other side, I also, as a retirement gig, I would really like to be able to teach at a college level. So if you have the more advanced degree, then you can teach the less advanced degrees. So I think in my aspect, that's something that I definitely plan on in the future. So for me, it was always a question of just when am I going to do it, not if or if not. So that's a little bit about my side.
And I can share about mine as well. So similar to Tara, I knew my psychology degree was going to be a stepping stone. I also knew I wanted to be a therapist. So it really came down to like, which grad program am I going to do? Which one is going to fit my needs and my interests? And after talking to different people and doing research, I kind of settled on social work as the pathway that I wanted to take.
Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing. I'll share as well. I'm kind of in a similar boat as Tara, Sky, and Andrea. I come from a psychology background in my undergrad, and they're right. There's not a whole lot that you can do with just a bachelor's in psychology. You're very limited in those options. And so I wanted more flexibility in social work, especially I think can be applied in so many different areas. And so I think that's something to consider when going into grad school. Just thinking about kind of like also what Josiah was saying, thinking about, what kind of career you want to land in and finding a degree program that really allows you to do that. and also, you know, if you're not totally sure, finding a program that allows you that flexibility. So great, thank you all for sharing that. I'm also curious, you know, when you actually started grad school, what were some of the expectations that you had going into it? And has your experience kind of aligned with those expectations, or have you found it to be really different?
I think I'll start with this one because I like had my earth shattered when I went back to grad school. I had in my undergraduate degree, I was a honor student. It was a part of a bunch of maybe extracurricular, you know, honor society type of stuff. I graduated with honors. I was business management student of the year for my bachelor's. And then I went to work, and I had really accelerated at work, and I had taken a lot of responsibility on, and I had a lot of growth. So then when I went back to grad school, I really expected to be, I guess I'll just say, good at it, like right out of the gate. And it was a little earth shattering for me because it was like I had forgotten how to learn. I had forgotten how to set, you know, the traditional aspects of school aside and do, you know, like the research stuff. And then writing papers was like this big thing. Like I read emails every day. Everybody's fine with those, you know, but writing a paper suddenly is like this big, you know, challenging new thing. So I think for me, when I was going back, my expectations, if you will, were that I would kind of just like get right into it and it would be this seamless transition somehow. But for me, it was actually a challenging transition. It took me like 3 months to figure out how to get back into this flow of school and then also balance my life, you know, and my job because I was, you know, working. And I remember there was a lot of like alignment conversations just with my spouse, you know, because I'd been married for, you know, 5 or 6 years at this time. And then it was like suddenly all of this time that I had, you know, to do whatever was now gone, you know, and I was like, like, I didn't expect that. I expected to be able to, like, this is a little side hustle, graduate school. And that wasn't the case, you know, so.
I know for me going into my program, I kind of had a little bit of both. I knew that my program was rigorous. I had a few friends who had done it, so I, on some hands, knew what to expect. On the other hand, though, I still feel like it kicked my butt the first couple semesters. I really thought that like I would go to school and I would do these things, and that part would be really hard. But then I would still have, like Josiah said, the time to, you know, on the weekends do things with my family. And towards the end, I did figure out how to manage that a little bit better. But, you know, the first couple semesters, I really didn't have nearly as much free time as I thought I would. So that was kind of, you know, a transition for me. But as time went on, I learned how to manage school and regular life as everybody does. And it ended up being fine, but definitely was a little bit of a shock the first few semesters there.
Jump in here. I think, you know, my kind of initial kind of perception of graduate school would be writing a lot of papers, which that ended up being true. I think probably the hardest thing was just juggling all the reading. I just felt like there was just more reading than anybody could ever accomplish, like in a given week. Again, I took one class a semester, and I actually fell in love with that approach because I could dedicate all my time and energy to that one topic. So that's, you know, what I appreciated. I also enjoyed you know, I had a fair amount of group work to do in some of my classes. And I think it felt different at the graduate level because we were more focused. I think we were more mature. We had learned mistakes that you did with your group work at your undergrad. So, you know, I had such an amazing experience. I also had friends and colleagues who were in, you know, the program with me. I would say the hardest part about being a part-time graduate student was just that I didn't have a cohort because, you know, I took 4 years to get my master's degree. So I had people from all different, you know, times starting and finishing. So that was a little disjointed, but, you know, I just made it work because I had no other choice because that's the pathway that I chose.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that just as a thought. The cohort, I mean, when you get into it and you're with the same group of people through the whole thing, it definitely lightens the load because then you also figure out who's good at what, and then you can kind of lean on some people and they lean on you a little bit. And then people also understand your pain, you know, because you're like, oh, this is murder. And they're like, I know. So yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, and I'll speak to that as well. I know Andrea probably knows what I'm talking about here, but with the social work program, you can choose from a variety of timelines. So you can either choose like a 16-month track where you just work straight through, no breaks, or you can take the 20-month track, which is what Andrea and I both did, where you have the summer off and then you come back and finish up your last 2 semesters. And I don't know about Andrea, but I know in my experience, that's made it feel a little bit disjointed as well, because you like build relationships with the people that you start with at the start of the program, and then some of them graduate along the way, and then you kind of lose some of that camaraderie a little bit. So yeah, that's a really great point.
Yeah, I'll second what Casey said. For sure, you do. It does feel a little disjointed with people graduating and then you're still there. At the same time, though, I really valued that summer break. I think by the end of my first year, I was ready and I needed a break in order to like recharge and be ready and feel good on like finishing the next year. Which I think goes to my expectations. I expected to be challenged, and I also expected to be prepared and build a lot of skills in grad school that I think kind of happened. What I didn't expect is kind of what a lot of people are saying was a lot of reading and a lot of like really struggling a little bit on the time balance of like, okay, I'm in class and our program has a field placement. Okay, now I have field. Now I have my other job. Now I want to see my friends. So trying to balance kind of all of those things at first was definitely a little challenging. But as you go, you kind of figure out little tricks and ways that work for you to be able to do all those things.
Yeah, and I can kind of echo what has already been touched on in my experience. It was also, I came to school at the age of 30, and I was a transfer student from Washtenaw. So my last few years of undergrad here at U of M, I felt very lost in the crowd, which it's already kind of an isolating experience as a mom, because you're not able to engage in as many group things and social events. But graduate school, one thing that I found surprising and I wasn't necessarily expecting was the social cohesion that I experienced more, because my program specifically, I think there's like 15 of us. It's very small. So I have been able to develop relationships in a way that I wasn't expecting to.
Yeah, great. I really appreciate all of you sharing. I know it's hard, especially depending on the program. It's hard to kind of know what exactly life is going to look like on that day-to-day basis. So I appreciate your insights and just giving a little bit of information just about your own personal experience and kind of how you balance some of those challenges that came along with the varying expectations and the varying things that you have to negotiate as a grad student, like balancing your work life and your personal life and family life and all the different things that come along with it. So kind of tied along with that, I'm curious, if there were any specific challenges that you had to overcome during grad school. I know we maybe touched on it a little bit, but how did you kind of tackle different things that maybe came up along that journey for you?
I can go ahead and dig into this one a little bit. One of the major challenges for me is time management. With 3 kids and activities and whatnot, I really had to work on prioritizing things. Like for me, it's family, and I really set social things aside for breaks, summers, and that's a sacrifice I made. And I know that was what I would have to do for my situation. But it's really important to me that the kids, get my focus from like 5 to 8 p.m. every night. And then, schoolwork I can do after they go to bed. I can do it in the morning before they get up. And so that's been a way I've tried to manage that. I plan really efficiently. I've gotten really good at that over the years, but I did not start out very good at that. One thing I found really important though is, while I don't necessarily have time for social events and hobbies, it's essential that I take care of like my mental health as part of this, because otherwise I can't make it happen. So whether that's, working really hard for 25 minutes and then taking a 5-minute break, just standing outside, listening to birds. As part of my undergraduate, I started attending CAPS regularly, not for any specific need, but just because I knew that getting mental health support was critical for me being able to accomplish what I was asking myself to accomplish. And that's something I've carried with me into graduate school. Having that regular therapy hour once a week, every week, where I just have an hour and I focus on me and what I need to do, and gain tools to cope with the pressures and whatever struggles, has been really critical.
Kind of to piggyback up what you were saying, Tara Sky, I feel like prioritizing was really important for me, and it was really hard also. The people in my very close life, my parents, at the time, my fiance, they understood what I was doing, but my friends I don't see all the time, and you're just a family, they don't get it. So it's very easy for them to kind of, there's a couple occasions where like, well, why can't you come to this? Why are you not going to this wedding? Why are you not, doing these things? And you just kind of have to learn to say, you know what, I can't unfortunately accommodate that in my schedule right now. And the people who love you and who've been there for a long time, they will learn to understand and they stick around. There was a few, people I didn't see all the time that now I don't see very much anymore. But you just have to learn to put yourself first, put your family first. And not everything can happen all the time. You might not be able to, go out with your friends for a night, or you might not be able to go to that out-of-state wedding, but keep your long-term goal in mind and it all works itself out in the end.
Yeah, echoing Paiton, I think setting those boundaries and setting time aside for certain things and saying, okay, this is what the time I'm using for this. Something that I kind of had to work on learning is like, someone wants to set a meeting during a time I have something else going on, like learning not to have to bend to accommodate that if it truly doesn't work for me, and like working with people to find the best time for both of us. That was something I really had to work on, to make sure that I'm respecting myself and respecting my time. And I think that kind of helps with self-care as well, and not stretching yourself too thin. That being said, one of the things I prioritized was seeing my friends on the weekends or seeing my family, just because that was a form of self-care for me. That was like how I unwound, and that connection was really important. So I was able to set aside an evening and say, okay, this is the one day, the one evening that I'm going to see my friends and my family, because that's how I took care of myself.
I'll jump in here for just one final thought. I think for me, again, working full-time, the classes that were offered in the summer were half semester courses. And so that was just a lot to cram in 7.5 weeks of content that would normally be in a regular semester. Now, I loved it because I got the rest of my summer off. But it was just, it was intense. And of course, I completed my master's degree before online education was a thing. So I also think things have changed. And I think if you're taking an online course, that also offers more flexibility in a graduate program, if your graduate program offers online options. But you also have to be very disciplined when you're not seeing your classmates and doing things, in person. So it's a different type of experience. And I always just encourage all students who are looking at degree programs to weigh the pros and cons of, online learning versus in person or hybrid.
And I think to further echo everybody, I mean, it's when you do it, it's a commitment, and it's a commitment that's going to take a lot of time and a lot of energy, and probably more time and energy than you, at least in my case, than you gave it credit for before you started. And I think, I said earlier that it took me a few months to kind of figure out the rhythm. And for me, the I don't know, the secret sauce or something was actually, you have to prioritize your life. And I was working full time. I'm married, and I'm trying to balance relationships, like everybody else, and events and some sort of family time. And then I have this big, burden of school as well with a, accelerated program. And for me, it was actually putting almost limits and criteria on all of these things. You cannot do everything perfectly 100% of the time. So school is paying my bills. My wife is my ultimate long-term goal. You know, I want to be successful with that. And then you get into a master's degree and you say, okay, I can work 3 more hours and maybe move this to an A+, but it's at an A right now. You know, so there was a lot of things that kind of went against my nature. And I said, all right, I gotta just let it go here. I can't make it perfect. It's not gonna add any more value to it. Nobody's gonna look back in 5 years and be like, oh, Josiah, A+ on this one assignment, really great job. You know, it's like, no, it's not gonna matter. I know the concept, I know I can make it better, but I don't have to do it. I don't have to, you know, nobody's, the kind of funny thing about high school and, you know, even your bachelor's is everybody's looking at GPA, but in my master's degree, nobody's ever asked about what my GPA was on my master's. You know, it's like, did you got your master's? Oh, great. Good for you. You know, we're moving on, you know, it's like, so I definitely do the knowledge, do the work, but at some point in time, you know, understand there should be a line, and, you know, sacrificing beyond that line is maybe just, I don't know, I don't want to say a poor decision, but it becomes on you, you know, so understand what you need to do and then do that. And then anything beyond that, you know, it's extra credit, you know, so.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I would say that, you know, once you get your next degree, I don't want to say your other degree didn't matter, but the most important one is always your most recent degree, especially if you're, you know, advancing to the next level. So I think once you get a degree, you know, that's the one that people are going to focus on and ask questions about or want to know. Plus it's most recent, and it's typically, again, higher than the degree you last had for that. So.
Yeah, you know, just to kind of, again, just reiterate a lot of what's already been said. But I like Josiah's point about kind of knowing, like, okay, you're not going to be perfect. You know, you're not going to be able to like be 100% in everything that you do. And you kind of have to be okay with that a little bit. You know, of course, again, you know, this is not to say like, oh, you know, you're not going to be able to do it, just don't try. But it's about like drawing those boundaries and prioritizing really what needs to be prioritized and when. One challenge that I had a few months into my graduate experience was just balancing the different identities that I now had. So my first semester I came in and I was just a student. The way that our program is structured, you know, I wasn't in my field experience yet. I had the privilege of not having to work a full-time job outside of school. And so I could just focus entirely on my studies. And I was even thinking like, oh, everyone says grad school is so hard, you know, what is so hard about this? And then it was like a punch in the gut the next semester when I was suddenly working part-time as a counseling intern and as a GSI. And so I'm trying to navigate, okay, how do I balance being a student, being a GSI, and being an intern? It was a lot all at once. And so I did have to try to create those boundaries. You know, I had to say, okay, I can't start grading this assignment while I'm here in my internship. I need to focus on what I need to do for my internship. Or when I get home from school, you know, it's like, okay, I need to do homework and then I'll focus on grading or client notes and things like that later. So just really setting aside the time for those designated responsibilities and just like everyone else has already shared, like prioritizing is really important when you're faced with all those different things being thrown at you during grad school. Yeah, so to kind of shift gears just a little bit, I'm curious, you know, what has your time as a grad student, how did that shape the outcome of your career or your goals? I know grad school and can be a really transitional time for a lot of people. And so I'm curious maybe what that transition or shift in identity or achievement, what has that looked like throughout your time in grad school and even following grad school if you've had time to now work in your field?
I can start. I think for me, something that really helped me figure out like, okay, where is my career going? What do I want to do is my field placement that I had through my program. You know, I got to grad school saying, okay, I want to be a social worker. I then got there and was like, oh my gosh, social workers do so much more than I could have ever imagined. What is it specifically that I want to do? So being able to go through my field placement really helped me figure out like, okay, what do I like about this position? What do I not like? What exactly do I want to do in the field? And then along with just taking different classes and learning a lot about all the different hats and the different roles social workers hold, really helped me figure out where I wanted my career to go next. And while that process was a little stressful at times, I think also just reminding yourself that I think, you know, naturally you'll get there as you go through each semester, you go through each class, like you will get to the finish line. And things will you'll start figuring things out naturally as time goes on.
So my experience might be, I would say, a little bit different than a lot of other master's or post-bachelor programs, just because my program is very career specific. So I went to school for nurse anesthesia. I graduated, I became a nurse anesthetist. That is what you do with your degree. So it's a little bit different in that aspect. So my journey honestly kind of started before I started my program, because I needed to make sure that that is a career that I wanted to do. With my degree, could I do other things? Yes, but it is very specific towards what I do now. That being said, it was something I was really interested in. My time through graduate school only confirmed that I really love my program. It was hard. It really challenged me, but I have never once regretted it. I've worked for a year and a half or so, coming up on 2 years actually now, and I really love my field. There are obviously differences in terms of careers if you want to work with kids or adults, or you want to do regional anesthesia and things like that. But overall, the general practice is the same. It's been a very rewarding career thus far, but like I said, my experience is just a little bit different because I went into school knowing exactly what I would be doing when I came out.
Paiton, if I could maybe put you on the spot for just a moment, I'm kind of curious, how maybe you came to that conclusion, because, in my work as a career counselor, I always try to, help people through career transitions and thinking about how their skills can transfer if they want to make a change, or just decision making on what career is right for them. So I'm kind of curious, how you made that decision, and you realized that that was really the path you wanted to pursue.
Give me 1 second. My dog's having a moment. Okay, sorry. So like I said, going from high school into my bachelor's, I always just had an interest in nursing. Honestly, don't really know where it came from. Man, enough. I had a couple of family members that were nurses, but no one in my immediate family had ever graduated from college. What I did really like about the nursing program is that it's very structured. And that's something I really liked. I liked that it was a 4-year program. You went in, your classes were essentially pre-scheduled for you. You had a little bit of room for flexibility in terms of some extracurricular type activities and classes that you wanted to do, but your core classes, it was laid out for you. This is what you're going to do first year, second year, third year, fourth year. So I liked that. I knew that it was essentially guaranteed that I would graduate in 4 years as long as I stuck to that plan. And that's something that I think worked well for myself. I don't do well with too many options. I get overwhelmed. So graduated, like I said, I went and worked in an ICU for a few years. When I was working in the ICU, I love being a nurse. However, being an ICU nurse is exhausting. And not to say my job now is not exhausting, it still is, but it's different. So I was working there and I realized, like, I don't think this is something that I can do for 30 years. So then I started looking at other avenues in terms of what else can I do with my degree. I don't know if any of you have family members and whatnot in the healthcare field, but there's a lot of things that you can actually do with a nursing degree. You can teach, you can do office work, you can be a nurse practitioner, you can go to CRNA school like I did. You can work remotely online doing home health visits. There's tons and tons of things you can do that I don't think a lot of people realize. I knew that I still wanted to be in a clinician-based setting. I wanted to be face-to-face with patients. So I started looking into different career paths that way. And then I started kind of shadowing different things. I went and worked with nurse practitioners and CRNAs. I found that I actually was very interested in anesthesia. It was something that we really didn't learn a ton about in my undergraduate program. And so as I was learning more, I decided that was something I was interested in. I did a lot of shadowing before I started school, because again, this is my program. It was a 3-year doctorate. So I never actually got my master's. I went from bachelor's to doctorate, and it was in 36 months. But again, coming out on the other end of that, you really graduating from that program, you are a nurse anesthetist. There's not a ton more you can do with it. Again, you can move different places, do different things, but you're set on one career path. So for me, it was a lot of talking to people that had already completed the program about what their life is like now, how the program was. Do they feel like it was worth the experience of those 3 years that were very brutal? And talking to many different people, there was not one person that I could find that said they regretted going to school. Everyone loved it. No, everyone said it was hard, but it was completely worth it in the end. And again, circling back to my first point about my bachelor's degree, the doctorate for becoming a CRNA is very similar in the fact that it is very set in stone for you. You do not schedule your own classes. It is a set amount of money per semester. It never changes. If you go through those three years and you follow their plan, you will graduate with your degree. So it was not a ton of planning for me. It was very set in stone. These are what your next 3 years are going to look like. If you do that, you will get your degree. You'll become a CRNA, which again is something that really appealed to me anyways, as someone who doesn't like having too many options and is easily overwhelmed when it comes to planning their future, if you will.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Sorry to pin that on you. I just think that thank you. I think that experience really highlights some of the skills that we try to, help people with in our work here at CEW Plus. Just kind of pinpointing the things that you like or dislike, and reaching out, like doing that networking or informational interviewing, and just trying to gather information from people who are actually out there doing it, and kind of weighing some of those pros and cons of things that work with you and your lifestyle and your way of learning, and things that don't. And I think that can be really helpful in choosing a program, and also kind of along your career path. Like it seems like you had like the set in stone, like this is exactly what I'm going to do, and so you were able to take those steps in order to get there. And so just thank you for sharing that experience.
Jump in here and share that, for me, definitely all of my education I've seen kind of play out in terms of how my future has evolved. I actually harken back to my undergrad days. Casey graduated from the Lee Honors College at WMU, and I did too, and I had to do a senior honors thesis. And that was the largest research project I'd ever done. And I didn't realize that was preparing me one day to write a doctoral dissertation, because that seemed not so daunting. But I never expected that I would have this many credentials, because I also got a postmaster's certificate between my master's and my doctorate. So my point is that I think sometimes, seeds are being planted throughout your life and you don't know where things are going to take you. But now that I have my doctorate, which I couldn't have gotten unless I had my master's degree, I founded an academic journal, and I'm a co-editor, and I'm an editor-in-chief of another journal. And I would have never dreamed that those would be things that I would have done. So I feel very fortunate that doors were opened, and that I also, like Josiah, I get to teach part-time, which is something that I like. So I get to be an administrator by day and a adjunct instructor, by night or by summer. So I'm grateful that, I had the grad school experience, and it really, again, planted the seed and gave me a lot of skills and opened my mind. I often tell people that I always kind of, I don't want to say I did things backwards, but I had been working in higher ed for like 20 years before I got a degree in education, because I had 2 degrees in communication and then landed in higher ed. So I was learning about stuff that I was doing every day. And I was like, wow, there's like a theory based on this, And so, that there were a lot of light bulbs that went off, but it also further confirmed that I was in the right field and I was doing the right work. But I always just laugh that my final degree was finally in the field that I'm working in. So everybody has like a crazy different path and how you get there. And, there's no right way to do something. I think part of it is, I always tell people, one of my favorite expressions is, the people that you meet create your future. And so all of us, I think, could speak to people who opened a door for us, or who said something that got us to think differently. Again, it's a variation of, it's not what who but I firmly believe that we're all in our places because somebody opened one or more doors for us, and we walk through the doorway.
Yeah, I'll just kind of say a little bit about my own experience with this. So I this path wasn't really accessible to me early on. I had my first kid at 18, and so I, when I came to school, it was something that I always wanted to do it. I knew I always wanted to do it. It just wasn't something I was able to do in the traditional way. And so being a part of this, it's just really confirmed how much I love research and I love working with students. So my master's degree has really encouraged me to just keep pursuing this path as long as I can. So I'll be applying to PhD positions. And I'm really excited about that, and I think, just to echo something Josiah had said earlier on about, coming at this later in the game really allowed me to really consider the direction that I wanted to take and have that time to develop that and the motivation. I feel coming at this in my 30s is, I have a lot more skills than I would have in my 20s. So I do appreciate that element of it as well. And, I have had some really important people encouraging me along the way that has made a difference too.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Case. I was just going to make a comment about people talking about opening doors and meeting people throughout your life. It's just so funny you say that, because I swear to you, I never had even heard about what a nurse anesthetist was ever in my life. And one of my high school teachers sent me, she's like, oh, I know you're interested in nursing. I'm going to have you go shadow my friend in Grand Rapids who is a nurse. I'm like, okay, cool, great. I drive out there and I go to meet this who I thought was a nurse. I'm thinking I'm just going to like a med surg floor or something. Turns out he was a nurse anesthetist. So I ended up spending the entire day that day in the OR. And before that day, I didn't even know what a nurse anesthetist was. So I really do think that the more people you talk to, the more people you know. I would have probably never been here if it wasn't for that one person who sent me on a mystery mission. And I ended up, following that person's career path, and here I am today. But it's crazy how one experience can really just change all of your goals in life.
Yeah, can I add to that real quick? I am like a huge proponent of just talking to people. Even we talk a lot about informational interviews, even informally, because one of the reasons why I got into social work, I was out for my 21st birthday, had a sash on. Someone came up to me and said, hey, happy birthday. Can I buy you a drink? And I said, sure. We started talking. She's like, oh, I'm a social worker. I go to school here I was at Michigan State. She's like, if you want any information, here's my number. Come shadow a class with me. Come, ask me questions. And so being able to talk to someone, even in such an informal setting, about, what her experience was in social work, why I should go into social work, what she kind of, her pros and cons, really helped me figure out like, okay, yeah. And then it also showed me that like social workers are so great and so sweet and are so welcoming. So even now, like when I go out with my friends, if I start talking to someone and I find out, oh, you're in a social work adjacent field or you're thinking about it, I'm like, here's my number, text me if you have questions. So even just like those informal experiences that kind of happen just coincidentally, definitely take advantage of those.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, especially, you hear the word networking and it sounds so big and scary, and it doesn't have to be, right? It can come in really all shapes and forms, and it can be something as simple as running into somebody when you're out hanging out with your friends, like Andrea said. So just never really be afraid to talk to folks and just lean on their knowledge, because you never know where you may find it. Yeah. I kind of have a similar experience actually with that in getting into social work, where it was my friend's like sister-in-law just kind of was making small talk and was like, oh, like you're into psychology, you should do social work because you don't have to get a PhD, you can just do your master's and do a lot of the same type of work that you can do as a psychologist. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then it was a few months later that I kind of circled back around to that conversation, and I was like, maybe I should look into it. And it turned out to just be the perfect fit. It kind of checked all the boxes for me. And so yeah, don't underestimate the power of those people opening doors, because it can really change your whole trajectory. Yeah, so to kind of tie us all together in kind of a conclusion, I'm curious, if any of you could go back in time and talk to your younger pre-grad school selves, what would you say to them? What is some advice that maybe you could give to people who are considering grad school?
I think I'll get right in here. So I think, my younger self, when you don't know, you just don't know, and that goes back to, asking for some advice and getting some networking and finding some people who have gone on the path that maybe you're interested in doing and seeing what their input is. So I think that if I were to give people advice, it would be primarily, if you know you're going to do something, or you really want to do something, you're not really, getting education doesn't marry you to one specific avenue. You can always go back and do something a little bit different, but it is a big time commitment and it is a big investment. So some of the things that I would say is, if you're on one of these career paths where you want further education, but maybe you're not sure on this specific avenue, whether you want to be very dedicated and unique or take a broad brush approach, maybe go, take a breath, get some sort of a career, experience under your belt. And then there's a lot of places out there that'll actually help you pay for your education from a graduate level. So, yeah, they'll do it for bachelor's level too, but at the same time, that was something, a benefit that I didn't know that I could even get at that, when I was in my my undergraduate. I graduated, and then I'm thinking, oh, do I need to go get my master's right now, or should I wait, or should I, how should I play it? And I ended up waiting a little bit, and then where I ended up working, paid for like 70% of it. So it's like this big benefit, and if you're gonna take all that weight early on, it can feel really challenging in that aspect. So that's definitely something that I would tell people, that are just considering things. It'd be like, look, take a holistic approach. I feel like a lot of people look at, what am I going to do today? And if I'm not successful today, I won't be successful tomorrow. And it's partly true, but it's really not the only route, so go and seek and understand and really understand what you want to accomplish through it, and then go do it, is what I would say.
Yeah, I would kind of agree with that. I think just from like talking to, within the 6 of us today, you can see that there's different programs, there's different ways you can achieve those goals. You can do it in 3 years or 2 years, or you can do it over 5 years if you need to. There's a lot of different routes you can take. So if you're interested in something, and like Josiah said, if this is something that you're starting to think, I think I might want to go back to school, just get out there and talk to people in the fields that you're interested in, talk to people that are currently going through these programs, see how they're managing. Do they think it's worth their time? I think the more people you talk to, the more prepared you'll be, and also the better path you will set yourself on in terms of which program maybe you choose to move forward with in the future.
Just to add to that, I would say one piece of advice that I would give my younger self would be probably have more confidence that what I'm writing for my master's degree or even my doctorate degree could have been published and submitted for publication. There's a lot of academic journals that actually want to publish grad student work, right? They don't expect you to be that PhD researcher or the person with 40 years of experience or an expert on the field. But again, what you're writing about and what you're studying could be relevant for someone else. So just don't underestimate that and get your work out there.
I think one thing that I would really say is, just that it's possible for one to do it. It can be really intimidating to look at. And I know, especially for people who might be coming at it, from some sort of like education gap or, a non-traditional approach, it can be really intimidating. And I think that one thing I wish I would have known was how much value my lived experience held. Those years that I wasn't in school and I was out doing things, you know, in life that really helped me learn and have some applied knowledge going into everything. And I was so self-conscious about it, you know, and so I think I wish I would have been able to tell myself that back then. You know, a lot of our lived experience just helps us develop these tools to cope with challenges, and that can actually really give you a leg up in grad school in a way that I really wasn't expecting.
And I'll just say on kind of the logistical side of things, like financial aid and loans, do your research on that stuff. I've noticed in Casey and my program, they have tons of scholarships available that you can apply for. Sometimes that money goes unused because nobody applies. So really do your research about like what is available. And then also just like public loans tend to be a better option than private loans because of the interest rates and things like that. And something I didn't know about were Grad Plus loans, which I wish I had known going into right away. That's really important because you can apply for a certain amount of money, and then it can be used for anything from tuition to rent to books, anything, you know, master's degree adjacent, and it's for graduate students. So that was a big thing. And then also just knowing like the public service loan forgiveness program, right? If you go into a public service position, which there's kind of all kinds of information about that on FAFSA, the website, you know, in 10 years, your loans can be paid off. So just kind of doing the research into what loans are available, what is the best option for me, and can I apply for a scholarship? Because those were things I didn't fully know about going into grad school that I found about later. And it would have been really helpful to know right out the gate.
One thing to just add to that, I think, you know, when you making this investment in yourself, you know, it's the most important investment because it's an investment in yourself. But if you're making an investment into a field that's going to be challenging to get the income in order to pay the loans, that's the other thing to look at. You know, it's like, it's really easy to think this is the job I'm going to get, this is the path I'm going to use to get there. But then when you're there and you're having to pay back all of this money that you borrowed at whatever the interest rate is, you know, it can be really, really daunting and a huge weight to carry, you know, and something that really makes you depressed, you know, and limits you. So always keep in mind, you know, that every penny you're borrowing, you know, plan that you're going to be paying it back with some sort of an interest, because it's easy to take it in the moment and, you know, think, oh, I'm just going to use this for dinner this week, or I'm going to buy this extra book, or maybe I'm even going to take a little vacation or something, treat yourself, you know, and suddenly it's like you get through it all and you start at the bottom, you know, regardless of where you start. When you start, you're starting at the bottom and you got to work your way up. So it can be really challenging, you know, if you take on a lot of debt to work through that, and it can be really difficult. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback off that as well, kind of like what Andrea was saying, finding those funding opportunities, because they really are out there. You know, I know in my experience, I was coming into it and I really had no idea, and I kind of happened into my GSI job, which I've had the privilege of using that to cover my tuition costs. And so really just exploring all of your options can be really beneficial. And then if I can also add just what I would say to my younger self, you know, coming into grad school, I really had no idea really what I wanted to do with it. And that's kind of what led me to social work, was that flexibility, because I know that I can make a shift and change at any really given point using my social work degree, because it is so comprehensive. But I think, you know, I would just tell myself, or tell somebody who's coming into grad school, you know, it's always important to kind of have an idea of what you're looking for, but you're not limited in one thing. You know, I know it kind of depends on different degrees, like how Paiton was saying, you know, her specific degree, it's very specialized. You know, you're going to be a nurse anesthetist, and that's what you're going to do. But, you know, in general, I think that it's kind of okay to not have a certain idea of exactly what you're going to do, because it kind of, as we've demonstrated, you know, life's going to throw you curveballs, things are going to change. And I would just say to welcome that. I would also just urge people, and I would urge my younger self for sure, just to have more confidence in what you're doing. Because sometimes, you get caught up in the shuffle of school and all these new roles that you're taking on and new learning opportunities. It can be really easy to think that you're failing, quite frankly. And I would just encourage people just to lean on your supports and have confidence in yourself, because you are really out there practicing and learning, and sometimes you don't even realize that you're learning until later you're looking back and you're like, oh wait, that's exactly what I'm doing here. You can kind of see like the dots connect, and so it's not going to be a linear path, but just knowing that you're going to get there eventually, and just feeling solid and secure in yourself, kind of fake it till you make it even, that can be really beneficial as you're learning new skills and trying out new things. So yeah, so I that's kind of all the questions that I have for all of y'all today. I really appreciate you all being here. I hope that our participants at CEW Plus can gain a lot from your excellent knowledge and your extensive experiences. And CEW Plus is always here for further counseling or further guidance into these issues. Anything that you may be considering along your career and educational paths. So yeah, are there any other final thoughts that anybody wants to share?
There's nothing to it but to do it. So if you're thinking about it, just get down there and get her done.
Great. Well, awesome. Thank you all so much for joining us today.